moment I stepped into the house, a shiver crept down my spine. It was supposed to be our dream home, a newly built house in a quiet neighborhood. But as I crossed the threshold, an unsettling feeling washed over me. The air was thick with a cold, oppressive energy that seemed to cling to my skin. The realtor had assured us that the house was brand new, but something about it felt ancient, as if it had witnessed unspeakable horrors. My husband brushed off my unease, chalking it up to first-day jitters, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard whispers in the darkness. Soft, ghostly voices that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I shook my husband awake, but he dismissed it as a trick of my imagination. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if they were trying to communicate with me. I couldn't make out the words, but they filled me with dread. As the days turned into weeks, strange things began to happen. Objects moved on their own, footsteps echoed in empty rooms, and the temperature plummeted without warning. I felt as though I was being watched, and the feeling of being followed became inescapable. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I felt a sudden rush of cold air behind me. I turned to see a shadowy figure standing in the doorway, its eyes hollow and empty. My scream pierced the silence of the house, and my husband rushed in, but the figure had vanished. Desperate for answers, I began researching the history of the house. It turned out that the land had once been the site of a 19th-century asylum, where countless patients had suffered unspeakable horrors. It had been torn down to make way for new homes, but it seemed that the darkness still lingered. As I delved deeper into the house's history, I discovered a hidden room in the basement, a room that no one knew existed. Inside, I found a diary belonging to a former patient of the asylum. The entries detailed the patient's descent into madness, their belief that the asylum was haunted by vengeful spirits. That night, I couldn't sleep. The whispers grew louder, and I felt a presence in the room with me. The diary had revealed the truth. The house was haunted by the tormented souls of the asylum's patients, trapped in a never-ending nightmare. As I lay in bed, paralyzed by fear, the shadowy figure returned, its ghostly hand reaching out for me. I knew then that we were not alone in our new house, and there was no escape from the horrors that lurked within its walls. My heart raced as I approached our new house. It stood atop a desolate hill, its Victorian facade looming ominously in the twilight. The real estate agent had called it our dream home, but now, under the fading light, it looked more like a nightmare. We had moved to this remote town for a fresh start, but as I stepped across the threshold, an icy chill washed over me. The air inside was heavy with the weight of the unknown, and the scent of decay clung to every corner. My husband dismissed my unease, claiming it was just the old house settling. But I knew better. I had heard the stories from the townsfolk, whispers of a dark history that stained these walls. That first night, as I lay in bed, I heard faint whispers, like the murmurings of lost souls. They were distant yet unmistakable, sending shivers down my spine. I nudged my husband awake, but he mumbled something about the wind and drifted back into sleep. In the days that followed, strange things happened. Doors creaked open on their own, cold drafts swept through closed windows, and shadows danced in the corners of my vision. It was as if the house itself were alive, taunting us. One evening, while exploring the attic, I stumbled upon an old journal, its pages brittle with age. It belonged to a woman who had lived here in the 1800s, and her entries spoke of madness, despair, and a malevolent presence that haunted the house. My investigations led me to a hidden room in the basement, behind a wall hidden by layers of wallpaper. Inside, I discovered a blood-stained altar and a grotesque mural depicting scenes of torture and suffering. It was then that I realized the true horror of our new home. That night, as I lay in bed, paralyzed by fear, I saw them, ghostly apparitions, tormented souls from the past, hovering above me. Their hollow eyes bore into my soul, and their spectral hands reached out, icy fingers grazing my skin. I knew then that this house was not ours. It belonged to the restless spirits that dwelled within, and they had no intention of letting us leave. Our dream home had become a nightmare, a prison for our souls, and we were trapped in a never-ending torment, just like those who had come before us. The moment I laid eyes on our new house nestled deep within the forest, an eerie sensation swept over me. It was supposed to be our family's secluded haven, a refuge from the chaos of city life. But as we approached, the towering trees seemed to loom closer, casting ominous shadows. The real estate agent had promised us tranquility, but I couldn't shake the unsettling aura that clung to the place. I tried to convince myself it was just nerves, eager to escape city life with my family. That first night, I lay in bed, the forest's nocturnal symphony surrounding us. Branches scratched at the windows, and the wind whispered secrets through the leaves. Just as I was drifting into sleep, a mournful wail echoed from the woods, chilling me to the bone. I nudged my parents awake, and they assured me it was probably just a wild animal. But as the nights passed, the cries grew closer, almost human-like, as though someone or something in the woods was calling to us. During the day, we ventured into the vast forest surrounding our house. It was beautiful, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Deep within the woods, we stumbled upon an overgrown cemetery, its tombstones moss-covered and ancient. Some of the dates etched into the stones went as far back as the 1800s, and I shivered at the thought of the lives that had once thrived here. As weeks turned into months, the malevolence of the forest became undeniable. Trees appeared to shift when we weren't looking, and strange figures darted among the shadows. I overheard my parents discussing a mysterious girl my younger siblings had seen in the woods, her eyes as dark as night. My parents reassured them, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One night, unable to resist the pull of the forest's eerie cries, I ventured out alone. The sounds led me to a dilapidated cabin hidden deep within the trees. Inside, the walls were adorned with faded photographs of families who had once called this place home. In the darkness, I saw her, the girl my siblings had mentioned, her eyes devoid of emotion. She beckoned me closer, her voice a haunting melody, and I stepped into the cabin. Now, I am a part of the forest, forever bound to the haunted house in the woods. The cries have ceased, replaced by an eerie silence, as the trees watch over me, and the spirits of those who came before me whisper their secrets in the night. My name is David, and the day my family moved into the old Victorian house, my life took a sinister turn. The realtor smiled as he showed us around, but his voice trembled when he pointed to the door of the room on the third floor. "That's the haunted room," he said, trying to mask his unease. Intrigued, I couldn't resist exploring the room as soon as my parents were preoccupied. It was a small chamber, lit only by a solitary, dusty window. A single chair sat in the center, facing an antique mirror that hung on the opposite wall. That mirror held a dark secret. Every time I stared into it, I saw things, horrific things. Twisted, contorted faces, blood-soaked hands, and eyes devoid of life. Whispers emanated from the glass, words too hushed to decipher, but their malevolent intent was unmistakable. Night after night, the mirror's power over me grew stronger. I felt a malevolent presence lurking just beyond the glass, like a monstrous creature waiting to be set free. I couldn't tear my gaze away, even as fear gnawed at the edges of my sanity. One fateful evening, as I stood before the mirror, the room plunged into darkness, and I heard a voice, a raspy, guttural voice, from behind. "Join us," it hissed, sending shivers down my spine. I spun around, but the room was empty. Fear coursed through me as the voice echoed in my head, growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. Terrified, I tried to flee, but the door slammed shut with a force that defied reason. Desperation gripped me as I clawed at the door, my screams for help swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Then, as abruptly as it began, the room fell silent. The door creaked open, and I stumbled into the hallway, drenched in cold sweat. My family never believed my tale. They called it a child's nightmare, but I knew the room was far more than that. It was a gateway to something unimaginable, something that whispered to me from the shadows. And I couldn't escape its haunting presence, even if I wanted to. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more content like this.